All right, picture this. You are staring down the literal end of the world. It's the year 2023, you're standing in the absolute ruins of New York City, and this apocalyptic nightmare monster known as the Behemoth is literally tearing through space to wipe out the very last remnants of humanity. That is exactly the terrifying situation our main guy, Jihan, finds himself in. He is the last man standing. Today, in this explainer, we're going to break down one of the most insane, over-the-top, overpowered regression stories you will ever come across.
So, what do you do when you're the last human alive? Well, Jihan doesn't just stand there waiting for the end. He goes for this desperate final stand. He dives straight at the behemoth and actually lands a massive, ground-shattering punch right to its face. It is an incredible moment, but instead of getting a hero's welcome, he gets completely backstabbed. The arrogant #1 player in the world, Baron Williams, just swoops in, steals the loot, and shuts Jihan out. He basically calls him a useful dog, and while these two are arguing, that's it. Humanity is officially eliminated.
To understand how things got this bad, we gotta look at humanity's downfall. Back in 2010, BattleNet started out as just a normal game governed by lit RPG mechanics. Fast forward to 2022, the Space League opens up, and suddenly this game escalates into a massive galactic war for survival. By 2023, Earth is completely outmatched, down to its last 10 countries. Because of all these fractured alliances and just pure arrogance from the top players, Earth gets expelled from the league. The sentence? Absolute deletion by the system. The planet is literally being swallowed inside out by a black hole.
But right as everything fades to black, the system suddenly glitches. A crazy message flashes up. An error has occurred. One human is still alive. It turns out Jihan's SS rank skill, the Nameless Divine Arts, actually miraculously resists the system's deletion protocol. The cosmic beings pulling the strings decide, you know what, let's give him a second chance. So Jihan wakes up terribly hungover in South Korea, completely unharmed. The catch here? The year is now 2020. He has regressed back to level 2, right before everything went totally off the rails.
Now, most people would panic, right? Not Jihan. He instantly starts aggressively gaming the system. He knows exactly what's coming, and he is definitely not playing fair this time around. First, he opens up the Hidden Conquest shop. Second, he uses an overpowered skill called Emergency Recovery on what looks like total junk. And third, he equips Dongfang Shou's SS rank brush at level 1. This so-called junk is actually an endgame weapon that a 180,000-year-old being formed a bond with. He pulled all this off because he kept his massive pool of 100,000 achievement points from his past life as the final survivor. That is a massively unfair advantage. So he casually strolls into the Bronze League tutorial, which by the way is a brutal survival deathmatch meant for elite guild rookies, wearing literal sweatpants and a tank top. Everyone looks at him like he's a total joke, but they have no idea he is about to absolutely dominate them.
And I mean, he wipes the floor with him. His whole motto right now is, the most fun part of this game is crushing rookies. When this cocky A-rank agility kid tries to speed blitz him, Jihan literally catches the blade with 2 fingers, disarms him, and takes him out in seconds. After that, he charges barehanded into a pack of 30 massive orcs. He's catching their weapons mid-air, snapping spears with one hand, and just completely wiping out the entire horde without even breaking a sweat. It is just pure, non-stop destruction.
But his fighting style isn't the only thing that's totally out there. When it's time to pick his class, he actually skips the warrior class he had in his past life and selects support. Why? To unlock a super rare stat called Divine Power. On top of that, he dumps every single stat point he earns straight into Martial Power, which is this totally broken stat that multiplies his strength, agility, and vitality all at once. He is completely ignoring the normal rules and party roles, and it's leaving all these top-tier mages and arrogant guild players totally confused. They honestly think he's just trolling.
The contrast is actually hilarious. Think about a standard zombie defense map. A conventional support is going to stand way in the back, healing and buffing the team, right? Well, Jihan's version of playing support involves jumping straight into a massive undead horde holding an empty otherworld relic, which is basically just a heavy metal rod and bashing zombie heads in to absorb their divine power. The guy single-handedly smashes 1,500 zombies, completely steals first place, and leaves his teammates absolutely speechless.
Part 1. The Sword King's Betrayal, a Family's Burden.
So underneath all this crazy action, Jihan has one huge motivation: protecting his 17-year-old niece, Saya. See, in his past life, her father was Korea's top player, known as the Sword King. But he abandoned his family and his country for a Japanese woman, and the backlash was horrific. Saya was practically bullied to death by toxic fans. Swearing to never let that happen again, Jihan decides to take the heat himself. He goes on a live BattleTube broadcast, walks right up to his brother-in-law's massive memorial statue, and completely shatters it with his bare hands. It instantly goes viral, and he masterfully draws all that toxic internet hatred away from his niece and directly onto himself. To keep his niece safe, and eventually take down the world's best, Jihan needs to get stronger, and he needs to do it fast. He specifically needs a game-breaking trait called Force. Force is this incredibly rare power that's born when magical power and divine power fuse together perfectly. In his previous life, only his old rival, Baron Williams, had it, purely because Baron was the only player with 2 status windows. But because Jihan remembers Baron drunkenly bragging about the secret behind it, Jihan forces the fusion inside his own body. He endures Joss' agonizing pain to unlock this absolute territorial control. Part 2. The Gauntlet crushing the top 100. Armed with his newly unlocked force, Jihan jumps into a brutal top 100 survival free-for-all, and he makes an absolute beeline for a younger, wildly cocky Baron Williams. This showdown is just visceral. Baron is relying entirely on his arrogance and his overwhelming raw magical power, but Jihan has absolute control over his martial arts, plus his own force. Baron unleashes his ultimate disaster skill, the Flame Wave, fully expecting to instantly vaporize our guy. Instead, Jihan effortlessly pierces right through the flames using the path of the immortal sage.
Jihan literally pins Baron to the shattered ground. He looks him dead in the eye and brutally exposes Baron's massive inferiority complex. He basically tells him, all your flashy skills, they're just a cover-up for how hollow you are inside. This is the truth. But just as Jihan raises his hand to finish him off with a thunderstrike, everything stops. A massive, terrifying ambush hits the entire arena. The battlefield goes completely dark because the deadly Shadow Queen has just arrived.
Part 3. Defying the Constellations. This ambush completely shifts the scale of the entire story. We aren't just dealing with human rivalries on Earth anymore. We are talking about constellations. These are literal godlike beings who sponsor players. But here is the massive plot twist. The Wandering Martial God, the exact same entity who sponsored Jihan in his past life and gave him the nameless divine arts, is actually a cosmic parasite. This god actively restricts his growth and plans to turn Jihan into a mind-controlled slave the second he gets too powerful.
Jihan, however, is absolutely not having it. He refuses to be a puppet and aggressively breaks the chains. First, he flat-out rejects the martial god's blessing. Next, he pushes through excruciating pain to manually purge the god's parasitic energy right out of his own eye. And finally, standing face-to-face with the Shadow Queen in the arena, he overpowers her dark magic with divine lightning, subjugating her tiny clone Ariel and forcing her to become his actual subordinate. After pulling that off, Jihan's power leaps off the charts. He forcefully merges his 3 dantians, which are the core energy centers in his body, into one single source, unlocking the super-exclusive Martial Spirit Star skill. He gains the Black Spirit attribute from the Shadow Queen, and he awakens the Divine Thunder technique. At one point, he's even pulled into this crazy cosmic dimension filled with floating weapons. He stares right at the martial god's shadow, completely refuses to serve him, and promises he's going to defeat him in the future. Part 4. A Global Showdown. Now that his niece is safe and his god-tier powers are unlocked, Jihan steps up to lead the South Korean team against China's absolute elite. It's a massive international tournament. During the match, the top Chinese mage triggers a trap that was designed specifically to take Jihan out. He gets sucked into an alternate dimension called the 108 Arhats formation. Immediately, Jihan's stats are nerfed, his martial arts are completely suppressed, and he is suddenly surrounded by a flood of 108 golden high-level Shaolin monks. It looks like an absolutely impossible situation, and the Korean team watching from the outside starts totally panicking. But come on, we know Jihan is just built different. Completely off-screen, he utterly dismantles this supposedly unbeatable formation. The whole dimension shatters, and Jihan casually strolls back onto the main map, literally dragging the defeated Chinese mage's stiff body behind him, apologizing for being a little late. He has become so ridiculously overpowered that what should have been this epic, grueling boss fight turned out to be just a minor inconvenience for him.
When the Korean team sees Jihan walk out, they go wild. They start celebrating because they think they've got it in the bag. The last Chinese player is panicking, the crystal is secured, and the match seems like a total wrap. But if there's one thing you learn about BattleNet, it's that you can never, ever let your guard down.
Because out of nowhere, this massive stone drops directly from the sky. It turns out the Chinese team had triggered this hidden, delayed trap from way up high earlier in the match. The stone slams down with insane force, instantly taking out a Korean player and completely obliterating the Korean crystal in a split second. The tide of the entire tournament turns just when victory was literally in their hands.
Which brings us to this massive cliffhanger. How in the world is Jihan going to survive a literal falling star when the elite RPG system itself seems totally rigged against him? Can he cheat death and rewrite the rules one more time to save his country's ranking? Well, that is exactly where this part of the story leaves us hanging. Thank you so much for exploring this insane regression journey with me today in this explainer. I highly recommend checking out the original source